I still remember the exact moment she looked me in the eye and smiled. Not because it was friendly, because it was the kind of smile someone gives when they think they've just ruined your life. "You don't belong here anymore," she said, folding her arms as the chain stretched across the dock entrance. "Lake access is for residents in good standing." I stared at the brand-new steel gate that hadn't been there the day before. Behind it sat my little fishing boat, gently rocking in the morning water. My father's old boat. The boat I'd spent 22 years rebuilding with my own hands. The only thing I had left of him. "I've lived here for 14 years, I replied calmly. "My access rights are written into my property deed." She laughed. Actually laughed. "I don't care what your deed says." Then she tapped the bright red sign she'd ordered installed. "Private Marina access, HOA authorization required." Her name was Karen. Officially, she was the president of our lakeside HOA. Unofficially, she treated the neighborhood like her own private kingdom. Everyone knew better than to argue with her. Families had received thousands in fines because their trash can stayed outside an extra hour. An elderly widow got threatened with legal action over wind chimes. A retired teacher was forced to repaint his mailbox 3 times because Karen didn't approve of the shade of black. Most people eventually gave up. Fighting her was exhausting. She counted on that. Unfortunately for Karen, she'd picked the wrong fisherman. I looked past her toward my boat. "I need to leave, the fish won't wait." She shrugged. "Not my problem. My equipment is on that dock." Should have thought about that before violating HOA policy. What policy? The new Marina usage policy. I never received one. You do now. She handed me a single sheet of paper. Fresh ink. Fresh signature. Fresh date. It had obviously been written the night before. According to the document, all lake access now required annual HOA approval. Boat owners had to pass community appearance standards. Fishing vessels were classified as commercial-looking equipment. My 20-foot aluminum fishing boat apparently lowered neighborhood property values. Meanwhile, Karen's enormous luxury speedboat, complete with giant speakers and neon underwater lights, somehow represented elegance. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because I'd finally realized something. This wasn't about rules. This was personal. "You've wanted my dock for a while," I said. For the first time, her smile disappeared. Only for a second. Then it came back. "I have no idea what you're talking about." I nodded slowly. Actually, I knew exactly what she was talking about. My dock happened to be the closest one to the deepest part of the lake. The best fishing spot. The easiest launching point. And the only location large enough for the oversized yachts Karen's wealthy friends kept buying. She wanted my slip. She'd wanted it for years. Now she'd found an excuse. "I'll be contacting my attorney." She grinned again. "Good luck." Then she leaned closer. "You can't sue the HOA without board approval." I didn't bother correcting her, because that wasn't even remotely true. Instead, I simply turned around and walked home. Behind me, I heard her whisper to another board member. Finally, that one word told me everything. This had been planned. Every single step. The lake had been part of my life long before the neighborhood existed. When I was 10, my father taught me how to tie fishing knots sitting on that same dock. When I was 16, he trusted me to take the boat out alone. When I was 24, I scattered his ashes across the quiet northern cove. Every Saturday morning, I still stopped there for a few minutes. Not to fish, just to remember. Karen didn't know any of that. To her, it was just another piece of valuable waterfront property. By noon, the neighborhood had already heard. People avoided eye contact as I walked past. A few quietly apologized. Nobody offered to help. That wasn't because they were bad people. They were scared. Karen had spent years making examples out of anyone who challenged her. Around 3 that afternoon, my neighbor Frank knocked on my door. He looked over both shoulders before speaking. "I shouldn't even be here. You'll survive." "I don't know about that." He handed me a folded envelope. One of the maintenance guys found this in the HOA office. Inside were printed emails. Karen had been discussing my dock for almost 8 months. One message caught my attention immediately. Once his access is revoked, Slip 7 can finally be reassigned. Slip 7. Mine. Another email read: "The Marina expansion will be much easier after he's gone." Expansion. That was interesting. Nobody had ever mentioned an expansion project during HOA meetings. Frank lowered his voice. "They've been meeting privately." "Who's they?" "Karen, 2 board members, and some businessman from out of town." "What businessman?" "No idea." He hesitated. "But he arrived in a black SUV almost every Friday." After Frank left, I read every page again. There was no signature from the businessman. Only initials. MH. That meant nothing to me. At least, not yet. The next morning, I decided to visit the Marina office directly. The young employee behind the counter recognized me immediately. "I'm sorry," he whispered before I even spoke. "I don't make HOA decisions." "I'm not here to argue." He relaxed slightly. "I just have one question." "Okay. Who actually owns this marina?" He blinked. "The management company." "Which company?" He turned toward his computer, then suddenly stopped. "I actually don't know." "Can you check?" He clicked through several screens. His forehead wrinkled. "That's strange." "What?" "Our ownership records aren't available anymore." "Were they yesterday?" "I think so." Someone had hidden them. Or removed them. Interesting. As I thanked him and walked outside, I noticed Karen standing beside her enormous white luxury boat. She was laughing with 3 of her friends. Champagne glasses. Designer sunglasses. Expensive jewelry. She spotted me immediately. "Oh, look." She raised her glass. "The fisherman." Her friends laughed. Karen called loudly enough for everyone on the docks to hear. "Enjoy your walk home." "I will." "No boat today." "Not today." "Maybe it's time you found a new hobby." I smiled politely. "Maybe." She frowned. She'd expected anger. She wanted a scene. Instead, I simply kept walking. People like Karen feed on emotional reactions. Take that away, and they become curious, confused, sometimes even careless. As I reached the parking lot, I glanced back one last time. Karen was still watching me, smiling, certain she'd already won. She had no idea that, later that same afternoon, I was going to receive a phone call that would completely change everything. A call about a decades-old contract. One my father had signed long before Karen had ever moved into the neighborhood. And hidden inside that forgotten agreement was a single sentence that would eventually cost Karen far more than her precious lake access ever could. The call came just after 4 o'clock. The number wasn't in my contacts. I almost ignored it. I'm looking for Daniel Carter. This is Daniel. A pause. My name is Robert Ellis. I was your father's attorney. For a second, I couldn't speak. My father passed away almost 15 years ago. I know. I handled several business matters for him before he died. Business matters. That didn't sound right. Dad had been a fisherman. He wasn't the kind of man who wore suits or talked about investments. I think we should meet, Robert said. I found something while organizing old client files. What kind of something? I'd rather show you in person. An hour later, I was sitting in a small office that looked like it hadn't changed since the early 90s. Bookshelves covered every wall. Boxes filled with faded folders lined the floor. Robert looked much older than I remembered, but his handshake was still firm. He slid a thick envelope across the desk. Your father asked me to keep these records. I opened it carefully. Inside were property surveys, old maps, contracts, and photographs of the lake from nearly 30 years ago. Back when there were no luxury homes, no gated entrances, no HOA, just fishermen, cabins, and open water. I don't understand. Robert pointed at one yellow document. Read the highlighted paragraph. I leaned closer. The paper was dated 28 years earlier. It described a Marina development agreement. According to the contract, ownership of the Marina would remain under a private holding company until every original shareholder either sold or transferred their interests. My father had been listed as one of those shareholders. I frowned. He never told me this. He rarely told anyone. Why? Robert smiled. Because he hated people treating him differently. That sounded exactly like Dad. What happened after he died? You inherited everything. I inherited shares. You inherited considerably more than that. Before I could ask another question, Robert closed the folder. Unfortunately, I can't explain the rest. Why not? Because another meeting has already been arranged. He handed me a business card. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. I looked at the name. Not a law firm. Not a bank. A private investment company. There was only one sentence written on the back. They've been waiting for you. That night the HOA board held its monthly meeting. I went anyway. The community hall was packed. Word had spread about my lake access. Karen stood confidently behind the podium. She wore a bright white blazer like she was running for governor instead of terrorizing retirees. The next agenda item, she announced, concerns improvements to our waterfront. Improvements. There was that word again. She clicked a remote. A large rendering appeared on the screen. People gasped. The image showed an expanded marina. New yacht slips. Private lounges. Valet parking. A rooftop restaurant. Where my fishing dock stood. There was now a VIP docking area. Nobody had voted on this. Nobody had even heard about it. An elderly man stood. When did we approve this? Corinne smiled without answering. It represents the future of our community. Another resident raised her hand. How much will this cost? Those numbers are still being finalized. Translation. She didn't want anyone seeing them. Frank stood next. Isn't that Daniel's boat slip? Corinne didn't even look at me. That slip has already been reclaimed. It belongs to him. It belonged to him. The room became uncomfortably quiet. I finally stood. My deed says otherwise. Corinne sighed dramatically. Mr. Carter refuses to accept the board's authority. I refuse to accept made-up rules. A few people chuckled. Karen didn't. The decision is final. According to who? The HOA. The HOA doesn't own the marina. She froze. Only for half a second. But I noticed. So she replied carefully, who does? I was hoping you'd tell us. Now several heads turned toward Karen. For the first time all evening. She looked uncomfortable. She recovered quickly. If there are no further questions, we'll move on. There were plenty of questions. She simply ignored them. The meeting ended 10 minutes early, which had never happened before. As people filed outside, Frank caught up with me. You rattled her. Good. No, you really rattled her. He looked back toward the building. I've known Karen 5 years. I've never seen her end a meeting early. Before I could answer, Karen stormed past us. She was speaking into her phone. No. A pause. He knows something. Another pause. I don't care what it costs. She noticed us watching. Immediately she lowered her voice and walked away. Frank raised an eyebrow. That's not suspicious at all. The next morning I arrived at the address Robert had given me. It wasn't some fancy skyscraper. It was an old brick office overlooking the lake. Inside, a receptionist greeted me by name before I introduced myself. They're expecting you. Plural. Interesting. She led me into a conference room. 3 people stood as I entered. A gray-haired woman, a younger accountant, and a man wearing jeans instead of a business suit. The man smiled first. I'm Michael Hayes. The initials. MH. Suddenly, everything clicked. You've been meeting with Karen. He nodded. I have. I knew it. But not for the reason you think. I remained standing. You'll have to do better than that. He motioned toward a chair. Please. After a long silence, I finally sat down. Michael placed a thick binder on the table. Karen believes she's negotiating with the marina owner. I stared at him. Believes? Yes. Isn't she? No. He slowly opened the binder. The marina has never been hers to negotiate with. He turned another page. And it never will be. I felt my heartbeat quicken. What exactly is this? The ownership records. Real ownership records. Not the ones that mysteriously disappeared from the marina office. Michael pointed to a long list of names. Many had been crossed out over the years. Sales. Transfers. Deaths. At the very bottom, only one active name remained. Mine. I looked up. There has to be some mistake. There isn't. My father never said anything. He made us promise not to. Why? Michael leaned back. Because he wanted you to build your own life. The room fell silent. You've owned controlling interest in this marina since the day he passed away. I laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because it was impossible. I've been paying docking fees. You never should have been. I've been asking permission to use my own boat slip. I'm afraid so. For several seconds, I couldn't process any of it. Every argument. Every fine. Every insult. Karen had spent years acting like she controlled property. That legally wasn't hers. Michael slid one final folder across the table. We've been trying to locate you. Why? Because Karen signed something she never had authority to sign. What was it? A multi-million-dollar Redevelopment Agreement. I slowly opened the folder. The first page carried Corinne's signature in bold blue ink. The second page made my stomach tighten. She had promised exclusive marina rights to a luxury boating club. Construction was scheduled to begin in less than 3 weeks. Without the owner's approval. Without mine. Michael folded his hands. Mr. Carter. For years, we've simply managed the marina on behalf of the ownership group. But now, he looked directly into my eyes. Every decision belongs to you. Outside the conference room window, I could see Corinne's oversized yacht tied proudly to its favorite slip. She still believed she was one signature away from taking everything from me. She had no idea that, before the week was over, I would make one decision that would leave her, and every one of her wealthy friends, standing on the dock, staring at locked gates they could no longer open. I didn't answer right away. I stood by the conference room window, watching the sunlight shimmer across the lake. For years, I'd believed I was just another homeowner trying to survive Corinne's endless rules. Now I knew the truth. I wasn't asking permission to use the marina. I'd been unknowingly paying people to use property my father had left me. Michael finally broke the silence. So, what would you like to do? I looked down at the redevelopment agreement one last time. Corinne's signature covered nearly every page. She had approved construction schedules, exclusive memberships, VIP docking assignments, even future rate increases. Every single page carried one fatal problem. The owner's signature line was completely blank. Mine. I assume none of this is legally valid. Michael smiled. Not even a little. And the boating club. They're expecting construction to begin in 18 days. They've already paid deposits. Millions. I exhaled slowly. Corinne hadn't just bullied a fisherman. She'd promised something she didn't own. Cancel everything. The accountant looked up. Everything. Every unauthorized agreement. Michael nodded. Done. And one more thing. Yes. I want a complete audit. How far back? Go back as far as the records exist. His eyebrows lifted. That could expose years of unauthorized fees. Then expose them. 3 days later, the audit report landed on my kitchen table. It was worse than anyone expected. Residents had been charged illegal marina maintenance fees, slip reassignment fees, special assessment fees, unauthorized permit charges. Most people had assumed the money went toward maintaining the docks. Instead, large portions had funded Corinne's so-called community waterfront improvements, designer furniture, private parties, luxury landscaping around areas only her friends used. Even the champagne receptions I'd seen from a distance. Frank stared at the report. People are going to lose their minds. They deserve the truth. He looked at me carefully. So what's your move? I folded the report closed. I don't want revenge. Frank laughed. After everything she did, I want accountability. They're not the same thing. No, they're better. The following Monday, every Marina member received an official envelope. Not from the HOA, from the Marina Ownership Office. Inside was a simple notice. Effective immediately, all existing docking agreements are suspended pending ownership verification. Luxury yacht access. Suspended. VIP memberships. Suspended. Private events. Canceled. Construction. Frozen. Temporary access would only remain available to verified legal slip holders. There weren't many. By 10 o'clock that morning, my phone started ringing. I ignored every call. By noon, Corinne arrived at my front door. She didn't knock. She pounded. I opened it calmly. "What did you do?" "I had breakfast." "Don't play games." "I'm not." "You shut down my Marina." I tilted my head. "Your Marina." She caught herself. "Our Marina." I smiled. Interesting correction. Her face turned bright red. "You have no authority." I was told otherwise. She shoved a copy of the suspension notice toward me. "You need to reverse this immediately." "Why?" "Because construction starts next week." "Not anymore." "You'll be sued." "Probably." She smiled for the first time all conversation. "There it is. I've been waiting for you to realize how expensive this mistake will be." I nodded. "I agree." She blinked. "It is going to be expensive." "For you." The smile disappeared. That afternoon, Michael officially requested an emergency meeting with every HOA board member. For the first time, Corinne wasn't sitting at the head of the table. She was sitting on the same side as everyone else. Just another homeowner. Michael placed one document in front of every board member. "I'll keep this brief." He opened the ownership ledger. "The Marina has never belonged to the HOA." Confused faces filled the room. Corinne interrupted immediately. "That's ridiculous." Michael ignored her. "The legal owner has been identified." He turned toward me. Every head followed. The room became completely silent. Corinne actually laughed. "No." Nobody else did. "This isn't funny." Michael slid the original ownership certificate across the table. "Signed, stamped, recorded decades earlier. My father's name. Then mine." Corinne grabbed the document. Her confidence disappeared line by line. "This," she whispered. "This can't be right." "It is." "You knew." I answered honestly. "I found out 4 days ago." She looked around the room desperately. "No one told me." One board member finally spoke. "You've been making decisions about property you didn't own." Another added, "You told us everything had been approved." Corinne pointed at Michael. "He represented the Marina." Michael nodded. "I managed it." "You never stopped me." "I repeatedly requested proof of owner authorization." "You never said." "I asked for the owner's signature." He pointed toward the blank line on every agreement. "You never had one." The room erupted. Questions came from every direction. How much money has been spent? What happens to our fees? Are we personally liable? Corinne couldn't answer any of them. For the first time in years, she had absolutely no control. The boating club's attorneys arrived 2 days later. They weren't angry at me. They were furious with Corinne. Their clients had transferred millions based on promises she couldn't legally make. Within hours, they withdrew from the redevelopment project. Every contract she'd celebrated collapsed. Every investor walked away. The waterfront expansion she'd bragged about for months disappeared overnight. A week later, I finally walked back to my father's boat. The chain across the dock was gone. The fake HOA signs had vanished. The maintenance crew had already restored the original marina entrance. As I untied the ropes, Frank walked over. "So," he smiled. "Owner." I laughed. "Still sounds strange." "You know what everyone expected." "What?" They expected you'd kick Corinne's yacht out first. I looked across the marina. Her massive white yacht still sat quietly in its slip. I know. So why didn't you? I looked at the calm water. My father used to tell me something. Frank waited. Never become the thing you're trying to stop. He nodded slowly. So what's going to happen? I've already decided. The following weekend, every boat owner received another letter. This one surprised everyone. Unauthorized fees collected over the years would be refunded. Docking prices would be reduced. Veterans would receive free seasonal launching permits. Senior resident would receive discounted slips. A public fishing pier would remain permanently open. No homeowner would ever lose lake access because of HOA politics again. People cried reading those letters. Some stopped me in grocery stores. Others simply shook my hand. Not because I'd beaten Corinne. Because I'd given something back. Corinne resigned from the HOA less than a month later. Several board members followed. Investigations into HOA finances continued for months. I never celebrated. There wasn't anything to celebrate. A neighborhood had spent years living in fear. Now it finally had peace. Every Saturday morning, I still launch the same aluminum fishing boat. It still carries my father's old tackle box. The paint is faded. The engine rattles more than it should. But I wouldn't trade it for every luxury yacht on the lake. Sometimes, as I idle out into open water, I pass the marina and remember the morning Corinne smiled and told me I didn't belong there anymore. She thought she had taken away the one place that connected me to my father. Instead, she uncovered a truth he had quietly protected for years. She tried to steal my access to the lake. She never realized. She was standing on a marina that had been mine all along.